Great. All right. So it's 6:30, so we'll kick off. Hello, everyone out there who's tuning in. Thanks for giving us your Thursday evening. Much appreciated. I'm Jamie Lee Oldfield. I'm the Executive Officer of the Future Farmers Network. If you haven't heard of us, we're a membership-based non-for-profit national organisation aiming towards young people in agriculture between the ages of 18 and 35 from all aspects of the industry. And we have a network of roughly 25,000 people, and we put our funds and time towards trying to get young people into ag and keeping them there through educational offerings, networking, bursaries, scholarships, tickets to events, that sort of thing. Head across to our website, which I'll put in the chat area if you want to learn more. And you can also sign up to our weekly newsletter called The Top 5 to hear about everything we're up to, including our podcast, which was launched at the end of last year, and all different sorts of things that are happening in the industry. This is one of the very cool things we get to do called Startup Stories. By way of background, the New South Wales DPI kicked off the Young Farmer Business Program in 2017 with a series of workshops designed to improve the business and financial literacy skills of young farmers who are looking to start their own farming business or expand the one they currently have. We have had a great number of very cool speakers from across New South Wales in rural and regional towns, and due to the COVID situation, we've now taken it online. So this is our third event online, and thanks very much for tuning in. Tonight with me is one of our 11 volunteer directors who put a lot of their time and effort into FFN, Liv Faulkner, and our guest speaker tonight is Charlie Blomfield. Welcome, guys. So Charlie wears many caps, and the one we'll mainly be speaking about tonight is his current operation, Boridgeree. If I said that right, Charlie?
Yep, nailed it.
Yep. An 850 hectare lamb, hay and cereal production business at Canowindra that he runs with his wife Eleanor and their family. So I won't blabber on too much, Charlie and Liv, but Charlie, maybe you just want to start by giving us a little bit more background about yourself, and Liv can take it away from there.
Sure. Thank you very much for having me. Good to be back involved in an FFN event. I was a director of FFN many moons ago and breached the upper limits of the age gap, and good to be back again. But I guess my background has been in professional farm management on a contract basis for a range of different owners for a number of years, and developed some experience and expertise that opened a few doors, and moved back into family farming, and more specifically with my wife Eleanor's family, of which Olivia is one of Elle's sisters. So it's a very small world. And then we branched out on our own last year, buying this property, Boridgeree, at Canowindra. So that's a pretty quick what we are today, I suppose.
Thank you, Charlie. Yes, that's a great introduction, and we should mention that we are brother and sister-in-law. And I spend a lot of time at Charlie's farm, seeing what they are doing, and it is really interesting and cool. So yeah, we thought it would be a good idea to chat a bit more about this. I think the reason why I would want to hear from you in part is because you have started a farm, you know, not having inherited that. And I know a lot of people in ag are really interested in how you went about doing that, and what sort of the alternative paths are to get into farming if you aren't, you know, lucky enough to be a child that is going to receive one through inheritance.
Yeah. I guess I avoided my family business like the plague, really, because of all the stories you hear about family businesses being too hard and all the infighting and all that sort of stuff. So from the start, I sort of set out on my own path, I guess, and started my own business while I was at uni, and providing some advice to some primary producers and some people that were putting money into agriculture. Then we started managing properties, and it just sort of grew from there. And then, as much as I tried to avoid getting involved in family businesses, I ended up being involved with my outlaws, your family business. So, and which was great. So we moved out to Warren, and got stuck in out there. And I guess the idea for us was to we wanted to be involved in the family business, but we also wanted an opportunity to strike out on our own. So we ended up buying a property at Canowindra, which took some hard work, but we still maintain involvement with your family business, with Elle being on the board, and then me being involved with sort of giving some strategy advice to the board, and then also the management crew that are out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, it's really fantastic. I think, you know, with our family company, just trying to run it, you know, as professionally as possible, and, you know, having accountability for the roles as they come in. And that allows us to use the expertise of Charlie, you know, whether that's on a contract basis or, you know, as a full-time employee, as it has been in the future. And I mean, in the past, and as it may be in the future. But specifically, what would you say to a young person wanting to get into farming that doesn't know how? Like, what's an alternative route if you can't inherit a farm?
Yeah, well, I guess speaking of my own experience, I effectively did it on contract. So you can either get the skills and things you need from doing the job and learning on the job, or you can get paid by someone else to do it. So I took the idea that I'd get paid to manage properties for other people, and I'd pick up all the skills that I required to either buy a good property or run a property, and more importantly, learn what not to do. So when you're contract manager, and at our peak, we had 26 properties across Northern Australia and down the East Coast. More often than not, people didn't hand us a property when it was in prime condition. We usually got handballed a real basket case and something that we had to work up, or something that, you know, like the dog that caught the car, a property where they couldn't manage it and didn't quite have the systems in place to do so. So we saw what not to do at the start, and then luckily we got to work with a lot of those businesses to get them sharpened up, and then move on once we'd done our job. So that was probably the biggest learning, was get out and see a few things, get paid to learn, and then use that money to learn some more outside of what you can learn on the job.
Yeah.
And I probably wish I had done that a little bit more early on, but yeah, we sort of focused on doing that within my own business.
Yeah. So in some of the things I've chatted to you about are like joint ventures, or going to, you know, a buyback scheme, or lease and own. What are some of those things that you've seen in the industry that work for people who want to actually own a farm?
Yeah, horses for courses a little bit. Some of them will suit different people. Contracting's a really good way to start out. You know, at the most basic level, you can start contracting with a motorbike and some fencing gear and a couple of dogs. And if you want to go into the farming game, you know, it's pretty simple to get some equipment finance and start to get some contracts. So a lot of very successful people started out contracting. The next step from contracting is share farming. So a lot of people around where we are at the moment at Canowindra share farm in the hay game, whereby, you know, a grower provides the land and then the contractor comes in and provides the gear, but they'll share farm instead of getting paid a per bale or per hectare rate or something like that.
Yep.
And then once you build up a bit of capacity and get some cash, leasing's a good option.
Yep.
And whenever I've spoken to people about leasing country before, I always make sure that they get an option to purchase that property. Doesn't mean you have to, but then at least you have a crack at it when your lease comes to the end. So we are actually leasing a property down here at Canowindra, which next year we have the option to buy. So that allowed us to sort of put our foot on that property, which at the time we couldn't buy. But after a little while, you build up enough steam that you can take it on.
Yeah, that's great. I know a lot of people ask me about the joys of family farming. And I've been mustering with you, and you've been working with my dad. What are the challenges, and what actually do you enjoy about it? Or would you never do it again and you're going to avoid it at all costs?
Yeah, it can be good and bad working with your family. Like some of the best times are working with your family, and some of the most frustrating times are working with your family. Like my first string family is really small, so I don't actually have much of an opportunity to work with my real family, like my parents and that sort of thing. But working with your family, and we've all been together for long enough that it's pretty straightforward. But it's not without its trials, particularly when it gets to the pointy end of a really major decision, and there might be a conflict of views, and you live and work together. So it can get pretty heated. But at the end of the day, you've got to learn how to put the tools down at 5 or 6 o'clock or whenever you knock off, and still be able to have dinner together and tear each other apart. So that works two ways. Like, I'd get frustrated, but I'm sure people around me get frustrated too. But at the end of the day, the family businesses have got so much more passion about what they do, and they're heavily invested in what they do. It's quite often by blood. And, the corporates and a lot of other businesses cannot survive what a lot of family businesses are able to survive because of that reason.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think having a platform to make those decisions when it is really important, whether it's, about debt or, new
Absolutely.
acquisitions or management or whatever it is, like making sure that there's structure, and that's really helped for us, hasn't it?
Yeah. When we went out to Haddon-Rig to start with, we first of all negotiated the role and our involvement in the farm through independent people, which was a really big deal. So we worked out what our roles and responsibilities were, what our remuneration would be, and how it would work going forward. And then once that was all sorted out, it was sort of, it was a pretty clear path on what we would do. Then once we started to get involved in the business, particularly with George, your dad, my father-in-law, we sat down and said, right, well, what are you good at? What am I good at? And what can we learn from each other? And we actually formalized that into a set of learning modules. So it was sort of a two-way street in terms of mentoring and training. I'd train him on technology and connectivity and some of the innovation stuff and developing things. And then George had trained me and mentor me on a lot of other aspects in the business.
Yeah.
And so it works pretty well, but you've got to be able to be pretty clear and actually put everything on the table, because that's where all the fights happen, and that's where people get quite upset about things that are not working right, or that should be my job, or that's not their job, or all those sort of things. So we found that really helped.
Yeah, that is a really good point. And in terms of the, after 6 o'clock or after dinner, you don't talk about work anymore. It's definitely so important. Like I was at home, during this COVID working remotely, and Dad would come in, as I was lying in bed and start wanting to talk about strategies to sell merinos at like 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And you're just like, no, God, can't we just talk about it the next day? Like, surely not now.
Yeah, dogs are a good excuse. I always used to say, I've got to go and feed the dogs. This is the best excuse to go and do something different.
Yes, absolutely. So then starting your own business, what's been the greatest learning curve, or, what do you wish you'd known when you started, as in your own farming business?
Yeah. Well, I guess like in terms of starting a business, it's probably one of the the best learning fields you'll ever get, because the fastest way to learn is to lose your own money. You'll never learn faster than when you're doing it with your own money. So you'll lose some money and you'll make some money and you'll have the wins and losses and all the rest. A farming business is no different to starting any other business. And you need to have all the systems, have all your plans, and get your budgeting in place, put the right resources around you in terms of people, and all that sort of stuff. But we sort of started from scratch. So it was super expensive doing so, because you have to buy absolutely everything from, the basic gear right through to, your stock. And we bought a property that had very good infrastructure, but the soils and the landscape was pretty run down. So we started from a zero base, and we came in at a, decile 1 drought or something as well, which was not much fun. Mm-hmm. But it's turned around now, thankfully. So, that's a pretty big challenge to take all that on in one go. We had a major move from Warren to here. We had a 6-month-old baby or something, I think she was at the time, and Elle was changing jobs as well. So, we sort of didn't do things by half. We just decided to do it all at once, and it sort of worked out. But I think you got to have all your ducks lined up before you go and take it on. And it's more so, from a financing point of view, collecting all the information and putting it through a good process where you can work out what that business is going to do for you. Try and take the emotion out of it, because really at the end of the day, when you're buying a farm or you're setting up a business, what you're trying to do is buy and secure future cash flows. So you've got to take out all the emotion and all the hype and the big dream about living on a farm and all the rest, and actually make it work for you. Because at the end of the day, you got to pay off money that you've borrowed, or investors that have come alongside you, or family, or whatever it's going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's been one of the coolest things about seeing you guys start a farm from scratch, is, all the things that you've done to get that cash flow generating quickly. Like, they've built a feedlot in the matter of, 5 months, designed it, got it up, and then they're pumping sheep through it, or the self-watering flats. Like, it's been an interesting, journey, and one that hasn't been without its pressures, So my other question for you is, if you were talking to yourself at 18, or you're talking to me at 18, and I know you have given me a lot of mentoring advice when I need to harden up and, be more, whatever the word is, what would you tell an 18-year-old Charlie with your V8 Ute and your 17,000 appliances that you would have had?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I would have probably listened to myself at that stage. But, I don't know whether I was listening to anyone, but I don't know. I was, probably wasn't the best example of an 18-year-old. But
who is?
tell myself to take my time. I feel like a lot of people rush when they're young to either get to where they need to be or to learn. Part of you at that age has to have a lot of fun, which usually we're pretty good at. But you've also got to start learning. And I reckon you can do that 2 ways. So you can either learn on the job, which suits some people, or you can go and learn in the classroom. But at some point, you've got to cross over and do both of them. So people that learn on the job, you've got to then go and learn about the gaps that you've got. So that's probably what I would have done a little bit earlier if I could have. I was pretty focused on learning on the job, which is fine. But then when I had, different experiences a few years later, working with some clients, we had a joint venture with a private equity firm at a stage in Sydney. I nearly needed a full-time translator to understand what they're talking about.
Yeah.
All complete finance industry game. I knew the numbers and I knew the strategy that was behind it, but I could not convert it into a language that I could understand. And as soon as someone explained to me what all the acronyms were and all the rest, I'm like, 100% got that. So if I had have studied and understood that a little bit earlier, it would have been much better. An example of that was for a business that we started. Me and another guy wanted to put a board structure in place, and we were pretty firm that we didn't want to be on the board ourselves. So I went and did the AICD company directors course and the chairman's course to understand what the roles and responsibilities were, so I could then write a position description so I could go and hire a chairman that had 50 years of experience. That was the best way I could possibly learn. I couldn't pay enough to get experience, so I'd be better off going and hiring a 65, 70-year-old person to come in and sit on the board and grill me every day about the decisions I make than I would be to go and pay for an executive education course or something like that. But that's just the way I learn, I suppose. So everybody's a little bit different.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. We have a question from the audience. With all the challenges and setbacks you had in the early years, and I would add particularly the drought that you came out to our farm in the middle of, which was horrendous, as everyone knows, horrendous. How did you keep your head above water and maintain positivity during those times?
Yeah, we tried to do different things. Whether it's drought or, starting a business and you've got tight cash flow or all the rest, you've got to have some other focuses. Family is the obvious one, which you've got to be able to not take all that baggage home, because that affects everybody that's around you. So you've sort of got to learn to deal with that. I don't know, as funny as it seems, like when the drought was on, I tried to focus on the way I ate, the way I slept, and whether I was fit. So sleeping well, eating well, and being fit hopefully got my sort of state into a way that I could best cope with, pulling a 12, 13 hour day in 44, 45 degrees, not falling in a heap at the end of the day, because you have to get home at the end of the day and you've got to be 100% energy for your kids and not bring all your baggage home for your family that have also had a hard day. So that's sort of what I probably focused on at that stage, and having some interests that were outside of the daily grind of farming or your business. So whether it be, get involved in some non-for-profit committees, get involved in local community stuff, play sport, have interests in stuff where it doesn't matter whether it rains or, the price of wheat or wool or sheep or all that sort of stuff.
And when not everyone talks about is the price of those things and when it's going to rain next.
Yeah, exactly. Talk to some other people that don't give a shit about that sort of stuff.
And don't know why you're still talking about it.
No,
exactly. That's a good point. Yeah. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah. Another thing about family farming that I've seen is the benefit of having off-farm income. What's your and Eleanor's experience of that, and why it does or doesn't matter?
Yeah, well, I think it's huge. Personally, it's fantastic in our household. Elle's the breadwinner.
She actually is.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. She has a shitload more than I do. She works on the inland rail. So with the way that connectivity is now, the opportunities for working off farm are massive. So I also find that a lot of farmers have actually got part-time gigs outside of what they do. So, it can be as simple as a salary-based position, whether it be your partner or some sort of, side hustle director roles or advisory roles that farmers have during quiet times. But a particular focus of what we've tried to do is build businesses outside of our farm business. So I've got an interest in a finance business that's based up in Queensland. And we've got an online e-store that's being launched in the next couple of weeks, selling sort of tools and calculators and stuff for farms. So we try and do things that are, a bit different to our daily farm. So it gets a bit of cash coming in through different doors, and also it gives you that other interest other than what you've been doing day to day, solving problems.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really, really important. Another question is more about the ag sector generally. As a producer, what's some of the things that you're wary of going forward, or, challenges that are at the top of your mind to overcome?
Yeah. Well, I think sitting here today, the world that we're in is changing faster than it ever has before. So I think like what sort of our age as a younger demographic has seen in the last 10 years is probably what our parents saw in 30 or 40 in terms of weather events, economic events, all this wild stuff that sort of seems to be happening. Right now, like good old Rona coming in, changing everything rapidly, I think that the consumer across whatever product you're talking about, whether it be wool, meat, fiber, food, fuel, anything is changing drastically. And we don't know what they're going to look like post-corona. So, like the meat markets at the moment, the way people are buying meat is changing, I think. People are buying more meat at home, but they're only buying the basic stuff. They're trying to conserve money. They're being frugal. So will we return to the heyday of everybody spending bulk money on really high quality products? I'm not sure. We probably will. And our export markets, I think, are going to change too. So trying to relate that back to your business, you've got to make a business and revenue streams that are really adaptable to markets. So whether that be changing your livestock production system to be able to suit domestic and export markets, value add products if you can, whether it be changing from grain to hay to go switch more into fodder markets rather than, cereal markets.
So it's agility.
Yeah, and a bit of diversification because markets seem to be shutting down faster than what they recover these days. So you definitely need to be on the game. If you're heavily committed to a single enterprise, it's pretty difficult, whether it be a season or a market issue. Yeah, you can really get caught out.
What about for people who don't know about other enterprises and they want to learn more, but they don't know where to get that info? Where would you recommend or how would you recommend learning about that?
Yeah, I suppose like at a really basic level, it's all on the line. So
on the World Wide Web.
Yeah, on the World Wide Web. So you can go on there and find just about anything really. But there are some really good advisors around as well that are like deep dive specific, gurus on whatever it may be, pastures or different types of tree crops or something else that you want to get into. Also, you can get around and have a look at other people's farm businesses. There's not that many field days on at the moment, but there's a hell of a lot of webinars. You could do one every day if you wanted to learn about all this sort of stuff. Call people. Generally, I just ask a lot of questions of all sorts.
You're big on Twitter too.
Yeah, Twitter's pretty good, but you get a lot of ranting on there. But there's a lot of information in it, but it's pretty detailed stuff. But yeah, you can generally asking questions if you ask people questions, they'll generally bang on for hours like I'm doing now. But
glad you said it.
I'll give it to you.
Yeah. One thing I did want to talk to you about was and I know because I've talked about it with you before, but what's your opinion on mulesing and like what the issue is there and, what the industry should do to overcome it?
Yeah, we're moving towards not having mulesing pretty quickly, I think. The consumer is moving that way faster than the industry. So it's a pretty difficult thing to adopt. There's some people going cold turkey and not mulesing. There's others sticking with it, strongly and not using pain relief at all or doing anything like that. We're probably in a transition mode at the minute where for our place in a higher rainfall area, we're trying to get the balance right between genetics and management to where we don't have to mulese at all. So we've mulesed part of our merino mob this year and we're not mulesing some. And then out at Haddon Rig, we're doing the entire drop of our pole merinos unmulesed. So it's going to take some extra management and progress from a genetics point of view. But there's plenty of cases in Australia where we're not mulesing and it's working well. People are hesitant because it's a bit of a change, but there are ways to do it, and the consumer is driving that change. And if you ignore it, you're going to get left behind.
Absolutely. And then just another question before I go back to the ones that we've planned. In terms of like climate change and what we can see that like even on our farm in Warren, that it's getting, such hotter summers, bigger and longer and harder droughts. What do you see, or how do you see the shape of Australian ag changing in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, funny you asked that because I actually had a bloke out here today. I don't understand entirely what he was talking about. He was a soil ecologist.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
he spent half his time crawling around in the paddocks on his hands and knees, sniffing the dirt. But he had a lot of good things to say around preparing your paddocks and your property to catch rain. So he's saying even if it's a huge rain event and you only get one huge rain event and then they're sparse in between, you need to make best use of all of that. Sounds pretty straightforward, but to actually get a decent pasture mix and cropping system in place to do that is quite difficult. So this property where we are now was bare as when we turned up. And our first rainfall event in 12 months was 2 inches in 40 minutes. So that caused a bit of havoc, but after that, we've managed to be able to slow the water down and capture it, where we can catch, an inch of rain and it doesn't have any runoff. You see the neighbours' places really running off and still causing damage. That, I think, is going to get more and more important. And it has a heap of flow-on effects around storing soil carbon and organic matter and increasing, productivity, whether you're a crop or you're a pasture grower, you're whatever you are. It's that's the key to it all, really. So I think, water use efficiency is going to be probably the most important issue going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And you see that with all the, all these investment funds, collating a lot of water licenses and stuff.
Well, they want
like
to
that.
buy the water because we'll keep leasing it from them. That's
of course you do. You can make more money from leasing it than using it in some cases. It's nuts. Okay, so to the audience, if anyone has any questions, just please write them in the comments section. Oh, there's two more. Oh yeah, have you managed to catch any more water or just maintain more ground cover?
Yeah, ground cover's the big one. Being able to slow it down, so we've sort of put in some little check banks in areas in the upper parts of the catchment on the property, like simple as putting rocks in gullies and that sort of stuff to just slow the water down. So across paddocks, we're not putting in banks or contours or anything like that. It's simply trying to do it with ground cover. So diversity of pasture species, perennials, that sort of stuff in those high-risk paddocks is what we're focusing on. And then, our river flats and all the country that's less likely to run, that's where we grow our hay and that's where we grow our crops and all the rest. So, high-risk paddocks is all about perennials, ground cover and slowing the water down. Yeah.
And I'll just add there, if anyone is interested in what Eleanor and Charlie are doing on their farm, Charlie has a pretty active Twitter, which is @DirtandDollars, @DirtandDollars. And his Instagram is also very entertaining, especially the fitness videos, which I actually get the intent with. And especially if you say, to get your mind off farming and that sort of thing. It's
you
really
can
good.
tell when Elle goes away for a couple of days, the content definitely gets better.
Yeah, you go from being a normal person to a complete kook on Instagram, but I love it. Sorry, JL, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you guys. Really interesting chat so far. Thank you so much. I just wanted to put a shout out before we get stuck into a few more questions. If everyone who's tuning in could do us a huge favour and just open their favourite internet browser on their phone or laptop, however you're watching, and go to Slido.
We can do this too, Charlie, I think.
If you just Google it, it's www.sli.do. Slido, I've also put it in the chat. And you'll be asked for a password or login, and it's just Startup Stories, all one word. As I mentioned at the start, we are lucky enough to partner with the New South Wales DPI Young Farmer Business Program to be able to bring you great chats with young Aggies like tonight for free. So they help us organise and fund these events, and both the Young Farmer Business Program and Future Farmer Network would love to know more about you guys who are tuning in, so we can keep creating events and making sure what we're offering you guys is what you're after and can help you out. yeah, you'll see on the Slido poll, there's just a few. We're just going to run through a few really quick questions so we can grab some info about who you guys are and what you're up to. And then when we're finished, and Charlie and Liv have answered all your questions, there's a post-event survey. It's completely anonymous and goes to a third party to provide feedback for us in the Young Farmer Business Program. So I know you're probably all keen to get to dinner or Netflix or the gym, whatever you're up to after this tonight. But if you could just spare 5 minutes at the end to fill that out, that'd be great. So I'm just gonna, so the first question, and I see we've got a fair few filling it in, so thank you very much. I'll just share this with you. Is what age group are you? Thank you. And the next question, what postcode do you live in? This one is a lot more interesting now we're online. When we were heading out to the regions, it was sort of 2 or 3, but now we're getting a heap in. So this is really cool to know where you're all from.
Anyone in Warren? No.
Nope.
No. Buddy mum and dad, I should have messaged them, told them to come.
Great. Next question is, what is your farming situation today? Oh, quite a few looking to get started. Hopefully they're getting plenty of tips and tricks from Charlie tonight.
If you guys have any more questions about how to get started, make sure you ask them and we'll definitely get to talking about them after this poll.
Yeah, thanks, Liv. And last one, if you could log on to Young Farm Business Program website and access any resources templates, what would they be? What do you think you would have benefited from 10 years ago, Charlie?
Yeah, maybe some of the stuff we're talking about, you know, like how to set up a business. You know, what have you actually got to do to register a business, get your business plan done, get some finance, you know, buy the basic equipment, you know, all that sort of stuff. Like it's not that obvious, I don't think.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm sure you've found over the years, and many people have been in the same boat, that there's lots of things that pop up that you didn't budget in or factor in when you first made that business plan to get started.
Yeah, I don't mind those ones. My wife doesn't like them much.
Cool, we've got some really good ones coming there. I'm going to leave that question open while we keep chatting. So if anyone thinks of anything that they think would be handy, please chuck it in, because the Young Farmer Business Program do put a lot of time and effort into trying to provide what young farmers in New South Wales actually need and want. So it will be taken into account. Cool. So that's enough from me. I'll let you get back into it. I think there's another question, Liv.
Yep, there is. Okay, so Charlie, do you utilise the government grants or loans like the Farm Innovations Fund to complete the water work, but also, I reckon, at Haddenrig as well, like what are the grants that we actually have accessed?
Yeah, there's more assistance available now than what there ever has been, I believe. Declaring a conflict of interest, I sit on the board of the New South Wales Rural Assistance Authority, so the RAA administers the Farm Innovation Fund and drought transport subsidies and bushfire funding and all the rest. So don't attack me for that, but it's a lot of there's a lot of funding there that's available for proactive initiatives and also recovery. So some of the things that we access in our business and your family business have been the Farm Innovation Fund, which we've used to invest in infrastructure and developments on farm, primarily around innovation and also productivity. So it could be centre pivot irrigation, building feedlots, any major step changes like that. We've also used the Emergency Water Infrastructure Rebate, which was 25% of water infrastructure, but that program is just finished. There's transport rebate subsidies, which cover costs of moving stock around during the drought. There's a $3,000 coronavirus recovery grant at the moment available through New South Wales Government, which you can use for marketing and training, which is pretty handy. And then there's a range of different energy initiatives around, from the basic stuff like changing the lighting in farm housing and workshops to LED to solar initiatives and, energy changing type projects. So there's probably more stuff available under this government than there ever has been that I've witnessed. And there's different projects, different programs in every state that they're pretty well all the same. They've just got a different name or a different acronym, but they're pretty hard to find. You probably start off by Googling your state and then grants, subsidies or rebates. Try the New South Wales RAA and the DPI websites, that sort of stuff. Department of Premier and Cabinet, issue a lot of information about where you find that sort of funding as well. So, it's not all about bank funding. You can get some pretty handy funding through these other programs. But they can be a bit difficult to find.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, like what we hear a lot about in the paper is just people being like, it's so bloody admin heavy. Like I can't sit there for 3 days and apply for this. But
I don't buy into that argument a great deal, because you don't want to sit down for 3 days for someone to lend you $100,000. Like if I was going to lend someone $100,000, I'd hope that they sat down for 3 days to do the information.
Agree.
And you do that for a bank. So why not? Why wouldn't you do it for a grant?
Agree.
I think that people expect the government to give the money, but they don't expect to give the government the information that they require. So it's a two-way street, and I think the systems are getting better, and the data is available within your farm to be able to produce that. It's a good exercise for growers to actually sit down and run the budgets, run the cash flows, do your risk management plans, because without someone asking for it, generally people just won't do it.
Okay. And also once you have it for one, you can probably regurgitate that info. Someone has asked, Daniel Johns has asked, what are the ideas for finding someone to go into a partnership with outside of a family business?
Yeah, that can be tough. It depends on what sort of business you're looking for, but if it's going to be a farming business, quite often you just start in your local community. So start with your neighbours, start with some of the older demographics around there where their kids aren't. I sort of target the older generation that don't have kids on their property or that sort of thing. They're more likely to be share farming because they don't want to do the work themselves, or they're looking for an exit in 10 years' time, something like that, which probably aligns more with our time frame of buying something. The people that we bought our property from in the early 80s. So, we managed to sort of negotiate an exit for them on part of their holding. So, probably start locally, and it's a lot harder to do the overseas investor or do the city-based investor unless you've got some really good connections.
And the other thing is using vendor finance, which I know you guys did. Like you did 2/3 of it in a partnership, and then the third, the vendor still, as in the previous owners, have that ownership, and you lease it from them with the plan to do it later.
So yeah, we tried to do vendor finance on a third, equivalent of a third of our property at the start, but it wasn't going to work out in terms of the structure. So what we ended up doing was a lease with an option to buy. So yeah, without getting into the detail, there's a put and a call option in there, and gives us a shot at buying it. And it also, sort of locks in that part of the property for us in the future.
Mm. Just like a question to bring it to the day-to-day level. What does an average day look like for you? And why do you even do it? Like, what's the good thing?
Yeah, well, today we had a bit of sheep work in the morning, so we're moving stock between paddocks. I did a round and did all our pasture assessments. I then had to film a whole bunch of videos for some product placement stuff we're doing. We've got an MLA event coming next week to film some cooking demonstrations here, so we're getting ready for that. Trucking hay, I don't know. Our day to day can be anything and everything, really. So that's sort of why I like it. We've got a lot of different things going on here, so it's pretty interesting, and also it's tangible. I'm the sort of person that's got to put my hands on whatever I'm doing. So it's a real. You do something and it has an effect. It has a pretty immediate effect, whether it be within the week or in a couple of months. You've grown something, you've changed something, you've built something. So I find it's pretty rewarding, and it doesn't matter what the season is, whether it's a drought or a bumper season or whatever. That you're still doing stuff, and it has a direct cause and effect, which I don't think you can really get in any other job.
Absolutely. And then what's a really crap bit? Like, what bit do you just go, oh God, I wish I didn't have to do this?
Yeah, there's probably a few of those, but that's all part of it. Like, you have to do we have 16 troughs in the feedlot because there's 16 pens. So we have to do that every morning, and that gets a bit tedious. But there's, I don't know, it's all sort of part of it. But sometimes loading, I had you unloading trucks with me on Christmas morning last year. That sort of stuff's not ideal, but it's part of the gig.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, does anyone have any other questions? Or Charlie, did you want to add anything else from your end?
There's a question there. How did you prioritize what to focus funds on and work on when you first started the operation? The priority for us was getting cash in ASAP. So we started trading sheep basically straight away. And the only way we were able to trade sheep was to build a feedlot. So we built a 4,000 head automated feedlot in 6 weeks. I was in bed for 3 days after that because it was done in the middle of summer, but it enabled us.
Because you got heat stroke.
Yeah, I got heat stroke, but it was worth it. We managed to trade a lot of sheep over summer, and we made really good margins in that because the opportunity was to jump on a really poor season but perfect trading environment. So it's being able to jump on the opportunity straight away, have your plan lined up, have access to finance, and then be able to execute. That was sort of our key thing. And then we could get on with all the rest of it, all the stuff we like to do, like, sowing pastures, sowing crops, fixing up fences, building all that stuff could come afterwards. But we had to get the wheels moving pretty quickly and get it all happening.
Yeah, fantastic. This one's from Bennett Forrester. What's the best advice you have for startups who are in the prototype stage, like approaching and liaising with farmers?
Yeah, get out on the farm, ask plenty of questions, get your product out there and listen. I've trialed a heap of different products over the years from technology companies and, IoT, all sorts of different stuff, particularly in the water space. And quite often they won't spend the time to come out to the properties and learn what the problem is and learn about their customer and the market. So I provide some mentoring advice to some of those businesses around, product development in the market and what producers really want, but you can't substitute spending time on property with your market, with anything. It's probably the key. And then the farmer won't learn anything about your product and how you speak about your product unless you're there either. So it's a bit of a two-way street, but that's probably the most important thing. And you see the ones that are succeeding today have really put the time into doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I've seen you use some real flops and some really fantastic technologies. And there's certainly holes that we're seeing, as we go along that need to be and should be filled by tech companies that aren't just all, farm management software.
Yeah.
Do you use benchmarking services, to monitor and track how you're going against competitors or other people in the industry?
Yeah, we do. In a couple of different ways. You can do it internally to an extent by having sort of your own family management team, but by having an independent, either it doesn't have to be a board, it could be an advisory panel that you have to report to, and you can benchmark yourself against your goals. There's also a range of different independent benchmarking groups that you can join. Or it can be as simple as getting together with a few producers that you admire in your area that you think do a good job and just sharing notes. So benchmarking can be as formal or as informal as you like. And it also doesn't have to cost a heap of money, but it is pretty handy because you know where you should be, or if you think you're doing a good job and then all of a sudden you see everyone else's numbers and you're like, oh, well, I can push this a bit harder. Or you actually are doing a stellar job and you just don't know it. So it does give you a reality check.
I know on Haddenreed, Dad uses AgriPath, and it's something that he really takes note of each year about how the stud's going, or how the sheep are going, or how the cropping's going, and it's a good way, because I think one of the big industries in ag is big issues in ag is that you don't often know what's going on beyond the farm gate. Like, it's not something that people promote on LinkedIn all the time about what their yields are and stuff like that. So I think benchmarking is really good.
Yeah, you've got to have a group that's sort of relevant to what you do and where it is. And yeah, I guess it does provide value, but only if you're in a good group.
Yeah, that's true. This one's from Ian. As an agribusiness graduate working on farm, how do I align myself with a mentor to challenge my business skills and provide guidance?
Yeah, well, I guess you've got to reach out to some people you want to learn from. I think most people are pretty keen to help out, and if they aren't directly, they'll probably steer you on to someone that can. And you probably have to offer to pay them. At least offer them a cup of coffee or some beer or something like that. But don't expect people to give you their time for free. The big world doesn't sort of work like that, where everyone's keen to go and mentor everyone for free. Quite often you might have to pay for it. Do it under a commercial arrangement where you set meeting times and do it relatively formally. They're not there to be your mate most of the time. They're there to give you advice and pull you up on things and encourage you on others. So, but yeah, I think most people are generally open to helping people. So just reach out directly. Don't be scared to back yourself and go and talk to someone. It's amazing if you just send a letter or send an email to someone, most of the time they will actually reply.
I would agree with that. And in terms of finding them, you can look in, like, even opening the land and look at producers or someone in ag that's doing what you like, something that you respect, and you can get their contact details from the internet or contact the actual newspaper or go on LinkedIn.
Over the last 15 years, I've sent a lot of random emails and letters off to people that you wouldn't expect to ever give you the time of day, and they definitely, they'll reply quite often just out of interest to see what the hell you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really good advice. Well, unless there's any other questions, I've got one more that I'd like to ask. What's the biggest risk? What's one of the biggest risks you've ever taken? Probably one that worked and one that didn't.
Well, we're only 12 months into having this place, so I don't know if that's worked or not yet. It's good fun at the moment, but I think it's going okay. So that's probably paid off. Yeah, I don't know. Some of the risks we've taken over time are things that do and don't work. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Like I've started a whole heap of businesses that have just failed and fallen in an absolute heap. And within a portfolio, you sort of, that's okay, because some of them actually go quite well. So you learn more out of the ones that don't work out. So I think the biggest risks have always been launching something, because you never know until you put it out there, and quite often the feedback might not be quite what you expect, but you learn a lot from it. And then other things, you'll learn from that and launch something, and it'll be more successful.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, did you have anything else that you wanted to add? I've got a lot of more questions. I'm just not sure whether people want us to keep going or not. I suppose from an organizational point of view on your farm, how do you structure the roles? Like, what's your role relative? I know you've got a backpacker. I know you've got a farmhand.
Yeah, so we've got 2 full-timers on the farm helping on a day-to-day basis, which is sort of allowing me to step back. We also use contractors for sowing and harvest, but everything else we're sort of doing ourselves. And then I tend to just get involved in the major sort of building or development activities, entity strategy type stuff. And then Elle's working full time off the farm. So we talk about strategy and any of the major sort of stuff that's coming up, like bank reviews and forecasting and that sort of thing. But she doesn't get involved day to day. On the farm we've got a pretty straightforward structure here. But it goes back to what I was saying before with your family, like having defined roles and responsibilities for everybody lets everyone get on with their job, and everyone knows what's expected of them, and they know what they're going to get paid for it, and you just get on with it and do it then.
Absolutely. Okay, well, we're nearly at the hour, so thank you so much, Charlie. It was really great to talk to you, as always. See you on the weekend. And JL, did you want to talk about the survey? Or I think anyone who's listening, the survey is at Slido, and it'd be great if you could fill that out. And this is a podcast, isn't it, JL, after this? So we can share it and, send it to your mates if they're interested.
That we'll have a recording. Thanks so much for that, Liv and Charlie. And as Liv said, if you just go back to Slido and chuck in that startup stories login, our post-event survey is open. There's about, I think there's 5 questions, and they're really helpful for us in the Young Farmer Business Program. So please fill it in if you can spare 5 minutes. And I'm sorry, Charlie, I know we've taken up heaps of your time, but I just have one last question to pick your brain in the last 2 minutes. Given your experience with, having your own family farm and working with Eleanor's family farm, what's sort of your insights on succession? And is it something you're already thinking about, even though your family is, your own family is very young, obviously, but is it something that's already crossing your mind?
Yeah, succession is a tricky one. I suppose, for the first 15 years of my post-school life, I ran for the hills for anything to do with family businesses. And then it ended up being that there was a structure put in place that enabled us to work within the Faulkner's family business, which made Eleanor and I more comfortable working there. So it had independence involved at the top end of town. So you could, give honest feedback about how things were working and all the rest. So that was more at a family sort of succession level. In our business here, we've got, a 2-year-old daughter, so we're probably getting ahead of ourselves that she's going to be the next stage farm. Who knows what she wants to do, but we are working at succession within our own team. So one of our guys is in his 60s, and the other guy who's just about to start he's 25. So he's keen to learn all about managing properties. He wants to own a property of his own one day, but he's here to learn for the next sort of 5 years or so. And then we've got a couple of backpackers in there that sort of fill the gap. But you know, if the older guys within your team want to retire at some time or are forced to retire, you need to have backups in your own team. So succession means a couple of different things to us.
Yeah,
I would add that like we had proactive succession planners, and one of the best things about them was just that they showed you the options for how you could do it. You know, like it doesn't have to look like something horrible. It can look like, okay, well, let's, you know, make this company into something that can grow and use different people's skills. And it's not about ownership. It's about, like, you know, what do you actually want the company to do for you as a family? Do you want to, you know, have multiple people living on farms, or do you want to, you know, all get out of there and go and run different things? And my advice would be that an independent person who can talk to you about it, who has the legal and the tax and the financial advice, is so valuable if you can, you know, if you can afford to pay it. And the government gives you, there are grants available to do that. In saying that, it's so complicated, obviously, and highly emotional. But you know, I think if you go in there with the intention of wanting to help and wanting to, you know, let other people in the family do what their goals are, how can the company actually help you do that, and how can you grow it using each different person's skills?
Yeah, great advice. Thanks very much, guys. I know it's a hot topic for a lot of people. So yeah, it's great to hear your thoughts. I think that's all I have. You've been very generous with your time, Charlie, and you live, and it's been great listening to all your stories. So thanks so much for that. And
Thank you.
unless there's any more last minute questions from the crowd or anything you guys would like to add, we can call it a night.
All good from me. Thanks, JL. Thanks, Charlie.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. We can't thank you. Oh, hang on. We've just got one. Oh. Thanks. We've just had a quick comment from the crowd. Thanks, Charlie. I've really enjoyed listening to your story, and credit to how professional you are in running your business. Best of luck in the future.
Oh, there you go. Pump the tires before we go.
There's another one, I think.
Oh. Read that out.
Charlie, you suck.
Lovely. Great. All right. Thanks so much, guys. We'll sign off there, and everyone have a great evening.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Thanks.
Yeah.